Not sure if you've noticed, but Disney's been on a little bit of a reboot kick with their stuff lately. You know, remakes of movies like Cinderella, Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, planned remakes for movies like Aladdin and Mulan, but that's all big picture Hollywood stuff. I think it's about time that Disney reboot one of their animated TV shows. Ideally, one where life is like a hurricane and has plenty of tales of daring, do bad and good luck tales. Woohoo. Ever since the announcement of the DuckTales reboot, people have been asking tons of questions. Questions like, will Donald join the gang this time? Who's going to play Scrooge McDuck? And most importantly, did they keep the theme song? And amazingly, the answer to all of those questions is yes, except the second one, the answer to that one is David Tennant, which is even more amazing. But there is one question that's been lingering in the backs of our minds for years now, and it's one that's never really been addressed, even though family is a pretty important component to DuckTales. And that question is, what's the deal with Huey, Dewey, and Louie's father? Alright, I'm gonna be real with you right off the bat and say that this is a tricky one. There aren't exactly a whole lot of duck suspects that we can go through that haven't already been proven as not the father. So instead of going through them one by one, let's instead frame this episode by asking, is Huey, Dewey, and Louie's father still in their lives without their knowledge? Cool? Cool. Oh, and by the way, we're gonna need to come up with some verbal shorthand for Huey, Dewey, and Louie, or I'm going to go insane in this episode. So from now on, let's call them the Quack Pack. Yes, like that TV show from 1996 that nobody remembers. Also, do not take a drink every time I say Quack Pack in this episode, you will die. And finally, when it comes to the new series, it looks like this show is going to be picking and choosing elements from the previously established universe and go forward like that. Some things from the 80s and 90s cartoon will stay the same, some things will take after the comics. Basically, they're changing a whole bunch of stuff, except Launchpad. Launchpad is pretty much the same. But today, with regards to the new show, we're going to discount any sort of major revelation about this mystery that might be dropped in the near future. So, with all of this in mind, let's take a look at the incredibly extensive Duck family tree. Since the character at the center of this whole universe is essentially Donald Duck, and since Donald Duck has been around like forever, there are a lot of conflicting reports about the Duck family tree, and I'm gonna write that in my journal of sentences I never thought I was going to say in my life. But this is because over the years, many different writers and illustrators have attempted to chart this family tree. And this family can get pretty sprawling. It's kind of like looking at a family tree from Game of Thrones. But the genealogy that is most generally accepted as canon is the one depicted here by comic artist Don Rosa. For reference, Rosa is a comic artist who wrote about 90 stories from 1987 to 2006 centered around the characters of the Disney Duck universe. And incidentally, Rosa picked up this mantle from Carl Barks, who wrote and illustrated the Donald Duck cartoons and created most of the characters that we know and love today, including Scrooge McDuck. So coming from Rosa, who wrote with the utmost respect to the world that Barks established, this family tree seems like the most canon representation that we're going to get. And just looking at this tree, there are a couple of things worth taking note of. Obviously, the most prominent thing is that the Quack Pack's father is conveniently obscured by a passing bird because it's a tree, because jokes, and that is so frustrating. But yes, he's there, he has the last name Duck, and that's literally all of the information we have based on this tree. That is to say, information that's directly related to the father. Next, we can see that the Quack Pack calling Donald Uncle Donald isn't just some cute pet name, he actually literally is their uncle. Furthermore, the mother of the Quack Pack can be established as Donald's sister, Della, both of whom are the nephew and niece of Scrooge McDuck, respectively. Now, in the history of the comics and animations, there has been some confusion as to whether Della is actually Donald's sister or whether her name actually is Della. But over the years, these inconsistencies have been hammered out, and the generally accepted canon now is that Della is Donald's sister and that she is indeed the biological mother of the Quack Pack. Also, slight spoilers, but it looks like the new show may be exploring the character of the Quack Pack's mother in greater detail, but let's not get too caught up in that. And since this is a Disney property, a very popular theory about the Quack Pack's parentage is that their father has died. And the primary piece of evidence for this first appeared when our three heroes were first introduced to the Donald Duck comics in 1937, when Della left the three in his care. The note that Della left read, "Dear Donald, I am sending your angel nephews Louie, Huey, and Dewey to stay with you while their father is in the hospital. A giant firecracker exploded under his chair. The little darlings are so playful, I hope you enjoy them. Your cousin, Della." By the way, this is one of those inconsistencies that got ironed out later. Anyway, so the theory states that their father probably died in the hospital. But that's a bit of a stretch, especially since it doesn't explain why the Quack Pack would remain in Donald's Donald's care if Della was still around. So what have we learned so far? Well, we've learned that the Quack Pack's father is a duck, who probably isn't Donald, because if it were, we would be venturing into some real Game of Thrones territory. And the only other thing we know is that he was injured once upon a time. Now, that's not much, but is there anything else we can learn from the Duck family tree? So here's an interesting thing about the Don Rosa family tree. There's actually another version of it. If it looks incredibly similar, it's because it's mostly just a redrawn version of the official one for his personal use. The most notable difference, however, is that the Quack Pack's father isn't being obscured by an inconsiderate bird. And the design is actually incredibly similar to another depiction of the Quack Pack's father, in this earlier unofficial tree drawn by Mark Warden. And while it could mean something, this early family tree also depicts some of the previously mentioned inconsistencies, like Donald's sister being named Thelma instead of Della. So while it is difficult to treat anything with regards to the Quack Pack's father as canon, this seems like the closest we're going to get to an official visual representation of their father. And surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, depending on how you like your theories, he bears very little resemblance to any of the main characters that we've become accustomed to. Aw shucks, there goes our twist ending. And one last note on this, apparently Rosa used to give copies of this tree out to his fans, in which he would write the fan's name in the blank space in which the Quack Pack's father's name should be. So the father's name is unfortunately still a mystery, other than the last name Duck, which is on the other Rosa family tree. Side note, I just realized that the Quack Pack's father probably took Della's last name in their marriage, since he, his wife, and his brother-in-law all share the same last name. There's a non-traditional fun fact for you. Alright, we're getting a little caught up in Duck family politics, another sentence I never thought I was going to say in my life. So let's take a step back and look at something a little more straightforward that may not have been taken into consideration when making these comics or this crazy action-adventure series, but it's still fun to look at nonetheless. Considering all of these characters are ducks, how do actual duck family dynamics work? Well, turns out that most breeds of wild duck actually maintain monogamous relationships, but these rarely last longer than a year. Kinda like most millennial marriages. In the case of wild ducks, the mother is generally more protective and caring for her ducklings, but they will abandon them if necessary due to things like illness or uncontrollable circumstances. And just like a certain duck family that we've come to know, the father would have long fled the nest. So there actually is a precedent for the Quack Pack's father to not be in the picture. That reasoning doesn't really explain every other male in the family tree, though. Or why Della appears to have abandoned her children despite an apparent lack of illnesses from them or anything like that. What might, though, is that it's worth mentioning that the white feathers and orange bills these characters possess mean that they're most likely a breed of duck known as the Peking Duck, which is a domestic breed of duck derived from the common mallard. And originally they were brought to America from China in the late 1800s. And domestic breeds of duck like this are much more likely to be more neglectful of their eggs or their ducklings, which also suggests that the Quack Pack's father or mother could have left them behind. And the Peking duck is probably the most common form of domesticated duck in America, primarily because they... this has some dark implications. So in the US, about half of all ducks that are raised to be slaughtered are Peking ducks, which are used almost exclusively for meat. You know, to be eaten. So while it's unpleasant, if we approach this from a real-world perspective, it's looking like the Quack Pack's father is most definitely dead, possibly eaten. Because this is Disney, and dark theories are somehow inescapable when talking about Walt's Happy Time Whimsical Bounce Mouse House. But that's all dumb old meat space real life, who cares about that? And you know what? You're right. Let's finish this off by taking a look at the parents are dead theory strictly through the universe of the comics and the cartoons. It's a common theory that pops up in pretty much everything, but let's see if there's actually any merit to it here. Firstly, and pretty damningly, Scrooge frequently refers to Donald as his closest living relative. And if Donald and his sister are of equal familial standing to Scrooge, then that doesn't really reassure us about Della's health. And actually, we can take this line of thinking a step further. In the comic series Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, written by Don Rosa, Scrooge meets his nephew and his grandnephews, very quickly telling them, "I'm not used to relatives either. The few I have seem to have disappeared. He says it just like that, but like, you know, more Scottish. To which Huey, Dewey, and Louie respond, "We know how that feels, Uncle Scrooge." Now, Scrooge may have initially been portrayed as cantankerous and uncaring, kinda like his namesake, so it might be fair to assume that Scrooge means that people have given up on him. But that doesn't really explain his grandnephew's reaction, nor does it really factor in that Scrooge is a pretty good guy at heart. So this quote paired with all of this other evidence only makes it look worse for the Quack Pack's dad. After all, if Della is dead, then fine, whatever. But then why are Donald and Scrooge caring for the Quack Pack instead of their father? It's not like a firecracker exploding under your chair is gonna sideline you forever. And finally, and most convincingly, it's shown in the 1942 cartoon, The New Spirit, that Donald officially adopted Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And it doesn't get much more official than Donald stating it right on his US income tax. I mean, yeah, Donald could have been lying, but since this short was commissioned by the US Treasury Department to educate people about how their tax dollars were going toward the war effort, I don't think this short would be promoting tax fraud, even if it is the American way. Wait, hang on, do government-assigned shorts count as canon? Judges say yes. So with all of that in mind, why would Donald officially adopt the Quack Pack unless their parents were completely out of the picture? More specifically, dead. I mean, yes, there are theories that suggest that the Quack Pack's parents actually faked their deaths or that they were deemed super neglectful, but there's way less direct evidence to prove that. Basically, all of the evidence in existence is that letter that Della left Donald in 1937. So if we're talking in-universe, in true Disney fashion, dead parents seems to make the most sense. So with everything we've taken a look at today, while we have been able to clear up some of the ambiguity about the Duck family tree, we haven't really been able to come to a definite conclusion about the identity of the Quack Pack's father. But based on our discoveries about the family dynamics of actual ducks, as well as the family dynamics of the Donald/Scrooge McDuck family, either way, the evidence seems to point towards the father of the Quack Pack being not only a character we've never met, but also dead. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to have to rate the plausibility of Huey, Dewey, and Louie's father still being in their lives without their knowledge 1 number 1 dime out of 5. And he was possibly eaten. But what do you think? Do you have any theories towards the identity of Huey, Dewey, and Louie's father? Are you excited for the new DuckTales series? And also, who is your absolute favorite character in the expanded Disney Duck universe, and why is it Darkwing Duck? Be sure to leave us your thoughts in the comments, and also be sure to leave us any conspiracies you'd like to see us tackle in the future. Until then, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Channel Frederator, and click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button to become part of our notification squad. And remember, Frederator loves you.